Have a seat, Robbie.
Oh, thank you. So sweet. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Thank you for coming. This is my great friend Sean,
Hi,
who runs
Sean.
this
Hi,
joint
Sean.
and let me in and let us all in. For now. For now.
Welcome to track 16.
Shana.
Then. He's gonna do
Woo!
Good job, Sean. Good talk, Sean.
Yeah, thanks for the talk.
Good talk.
I think we can handle it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously, it's a cliche to say somebody needs no introduction. I might need a little introduction. He doesn't. That's Robbie Conal. That's why we're here, all of us.
So let me tell you about her. I met her when she was a whippersnapper, and we were just talking about how long we've been in LA and the intersections of the LA Weekly and all that underground culture and stuff when the Weekly actually was underground, and
Now
so were we.
More like, I don't know, low key.
Yeah,
and
we're
underground,
cool.
But
We're
still
cool.
cool. We're cool again. Who fucking knows? It's not about us. But yeah, no, it's true. That is what we were just talking about. So I'm on my third go round at the LA Weekly. I don't think you're allowed to live in LA and not work there at least once, right? Everyone. So most people work there more than once, which is a whole other story. But that is exactly right. I moved to LA in 1995. And basically, the first thing I saw was Artburn in the LA Weekly, and I was like, "This is cool. This is going to be good."
Not that they know what that is.
Well, it was. Look. Of course, they know what that is. That was, the famous back page that would often correspond to postering campaigns during which I just learned tonight was. The precursor was a written column, but the Artburn itself was often the content of the postering and public art campaigns, although it was it every week?
It was once a month, thank God. I gotta say that, hi Jonathan, that's what I gotta say. I've gotta say that, editorial cartoonists are insane. They maybe 4 or 5 times a week they do an editorial cartoon about the news. Maybe 4 or 5 times a year I do a poster, and I'm struggling. Not this year, of course.
Plenty to work with, am I right? Yeah. I know.
A little too much.
And that's kind of the shape of what I wanted to talk about tonight, because it was like, we're looking at the Supreme Court painting in the back, and, it's notable and sort of heartbreaking in a way how things like that become relevant again long after there maybe was an idea or a hope that it had been addressed. And so, as we look, back on sort of all of that, but also not that far back as in like headlines of this week, we're, here in this conversation. And, there's so many things I want to ask you sort of all at once, but I think that since we did, so very soon after I moved here, I lived in Venice, and so we just instantly had a lot of friends in common, and I was really
We lived
happy.
in Venice.
We
I think
both-
everybody, that's another thing.
We all lived in Venice, right?
Yeah, we all lived in
90s.
Venice.
Didn't we all live in Venice in the 90s?
Yeah, just like we all worked for the Weekly at one
Right,
point.
we all worked for the Weekly, we all lived in Venice.
They
That's
go
how I
together,
remember it.
it's like...
But I met you because, at that time we had a friend in common, Rick Robinson, who was convincing billboard companies to do more political activities.
Did not go well.
It didn't go well then, but here we are in a world right now where there's not one but 2 super high profile competing political billboard campaigns in LA. There's the Creative and the Four Freedoms.
And they don't call, they don't write, like...
I know, but I'm just saying, so there's a lot of things that you sort of started that are very much happening, this moment, still again.
More.
I think a lot of people in this room, myself included, would argue that that's basically because of you.
I don't really think so. I think it
I
might
know
have
you
something to
wouldn't
do
think
with
that.
politics. Maybe something to do with, like the Reagan administration, the Bush administration, the Clinton administration. We'll leave Obama to rest for now. And then...
Right, cue the evil.
Didn't really
organ
have to do
music.
with me. I just happened to be a little old artist who couldn't figure out any other way to express myself in public about public issues that I cared about. You know, little things like democracy with a small. I think young people have heard of it. At least you guys might have thought you experienced it. One thing I have to say, I meant to say this before we started, that you know, Donald Trump did not win the election in 2016. He lost by 3 million votes. And I just have to say about this midterm election, there is no electoral college in this election. So look out! Here we come. Right, Leo? You're going to vote the old Mayor Daley way, right? As many times as you can, even though you're dead.
Early and often.
Yeah.
Well, and that, you know, we're going to bounce around a little bit, obviously, because that's what happens whenever we get together, and there's no point in trying to prevent it just because there's all these people here. But it's going to be a little non-linear, and if you have questions, I think we both agree that you should just feel free to go ahead and ask them when they occur to you. But
especially when we're done.
Especially, well, okay, we didn't, you know, but I like.
Yeah, whatever.
All right, exactly, whatever. But that is, you know, we were talking about this a little bit, and I was talking with some people in the audience. This election and our relative position to it as Los Angeles voters, because there's a thing where it's almost like your vote doesn't matter, not in a bad way, but it's so securely blue that, you know, it's a drop in the bucket. We know what California is going to do. However, this is congressional districts, of which there are plenty ringing Los Angeles that are not as reliably blue. And so I was just wondering if you have been working with people or doing campaigns beyond the ones that, you know, we know about here in town that a lot of us try to participate in. Have you gone back out into the outlying counties the way that I know you did, like back in the day?
Well, I you know, my working mantra is, hi guys, come on, there's 2 seats right here.
That's not his mantra.
That happens to be my mantra.
Okay, sorry, my bad. Hi guys.
And check. Come on. Anyway, let's see if I can remember what my mantra is. Apply what you do best to what you care about most. And so there are only 2 things. Even when I was a little kid, there are only 2 things I could do or would do, and that's draw or play baseball. So I can draw. And that's and you know, I can't play baseball anymore. In fact, you know, the one thing about making art that my great friend Lenny, who's actually older than I am, has always said is the one thing that's better about art than about athletics is you could get better as you get older. And it could happen. And artists are even look forward to having a late period where fuck them all, you know, like I am the only complete man in the industry, I'm gonna do whatever I want. That's kind of what this is my late period, because I got really loose and goosey and also out of my fucking mind. My head exploded, and up in Los Osos where there's nobody to hear me or see me or anything.
Right,
And,
like the occasional like migrating dolphin.
Yeah, maybe a dolphin, a white pelican, or some otters who look at me like, what? This is pretty good. Yeah. We got clams. Yeah, so
I mean, I think that's a really beautiful way, 2 things, because one, that's like the one track with you is always the content, because that's clearly like the message, the brilliant wordsmithing pun situation that goes into each one.
Just a little New York wise guy stuff.
Yeah, wise ass.
Can't get it out of the system.
You're good at it. You clearly have a knack. But then the other part of it, and this is why I love, even though the posters and the work that happens in public is so important and so powerful, I love a gallery show from you, because what a lot of people, even your biggest fans, and I never tire of saying this, don't always realize is that it's a painting practice. They're paintings. It's a studio. It's materials. It's not simply or not exclusively the graphic situation that happens once it becomes a postering campaign.
Well, you know, every creative person, whatever medium they're using, has their way of getting their torque. You know, like rubbing 2 sticks together to make fire, whatever it is. So say Dave, who's here somewhere, shreds. You know, Sean takes pictures of everything. You know, dancers dance and do fantastic things, jump around like crazy. My way of actually getting to interrogating these people and getting to their terrible souls through their faces is by using oil paint. And I was brought up in New York City on the upper left side of Manhattan. And my parents were very political and so forth and so on, but all my heroes when I was a kid were New York abstract expressionist painters. And every teacher I ever had, and I went to art school all my life, and then taught at art schools all the rest of my life, if you call that teaching, what I did. All my teachers, whatever they taught us, whether it was life drawing or this or that or sculpture or whatnot, went back to their studios and they were abstract expressionist painters. So what I did was, when I finally realized that I had to make art about specific social and political issues, and that would involve doing portraits of ugly old white guys in suits and ties who would abuse their power in the name of representative democracy or religion or global capitalism or whatnot, that I could take all the chops, the abstract expressionist chops, because abstract expressionists, you know, they painted their emotions, like what they felt about everything, whether you could see, you know, like any kind of image in it or not. It was just an expression of their feelings. We depended on the paint to be our partner. You know, you say, me and the paint, do something, surprise me. You know, like I knew guys who knew the schedule of milk trucks, and they would take their paintings out and leave them in the road so that they'd drive over them and something would happen, you know. That was like the way they felt, that they got run over by, you know, some emotion or something. So what I ended up doing was taking all those painterly chops and pushing them into these faces. And that's how I get my little, what you say, the globby stuff.
Yeah.
That we love and hate so much. You know?
Exactly, and I think, you know, I didn't do that.
Yeah, the texture, that's it, texture, that's what I, yeah.
Gloppy. Yes, gloppy. No, that's going to be the story from now on. But I think, you know, there's something that happens.
And pink glitter.
Yes,
pink
always.
Glitter. We're in LA, you can't have too much glitter.
That's a true statement. You cannot have too much glitter. We argue about that at my house sometimes, but I'm on your side.
Well, if you ever need my help with that,
yeah,
I know where he is. He's in here somewhere.
He's back there.
Yeah. He's scared of us now.
But the thing is, you know, and I started out appreciating this tonight because of the epic operatic impasto of John Bolton's mustachio. But it's true of every single work that I think it's not only that because you paint so thickly yourself in that sort of abstract expressionist kind of textural homage, but also then what does happen when it's translated into a flat image is all of that, there's something that is sinister about the black and the white, the real, even when it's in color, the really sort of heavy sagging skin that really sort of moves the story of them as villains.
You know, Shana, I tell people this when they start in with this, which is lovely, thank you, about the ugliness of my work.
That's exactly what I mean. The work is beautiful. The content is ugly. That paradox, I think, is really something that's unique in what you're.
Well, I'll tell you, my secret is, like, when these guys come into the studio for me to do their portrait, you know, they sit down and they're a little twitchy. You know, for some reason, they're kind of squirmy, and I just, I just paint them the way they are, and inner beauty, right, or inner whatever.
Inner whatever.
And there are not many really wonderful things about being an artist in our capitalist cultural economy. It's not like doing arbitrage or Trumpian real estate with Russians.
It's not like that.
Yeah, it's not like that.
It's not like that.
It's a wannabe, but it's not like that. But the one thing that you can do, that art can do, is interrogate a face and get into a soul if you're doing a good job. And that's what portraiture is about. I happen to prefer to do it in cat portraits, but this is what we have. So I'm trying to retire and do portraits of my cats, which are heartfelt, and these are heartfelt too. It's just I happen to have weaponized humor, and I have, like, instead of a paintbrush, I have a dagger.
Yes.
And that's the way I go about it. Hi, I'm Chucky.
That's so fantastic.
Your chopped liver.
Your chopped liver. Yeah, and I mean, I think that you started out by talking about editorial cartoonists, and I know that you sort of meant like the pace that they do it every day or whatever. And however, the last thing you did before we sat down was check the headlines, and I know, so I know that there's more than daily inspiration for you if you want it. But I also know,
and if you don't want it,
even if you don't want it. But I also know that one of the first names you mentioned was Reagan. And that is what was going on when all this started. Yes. So we can talk about how history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. But it's not even that, because the shit that's going on can be traced on a level of social policy to the Reagan administration. Skid Row is a nearby and perfect example that that's a situation whose egregiousness started specifically when Ronald Reagan is governor.
Yeah, and we were here.
And we were here.
We had a little foreshadowing of what was going to happen.
And it got like worse and worse, and then a little better, and then worse again, because the sequester and the grand bargain, nobody remembers Ted Cruz shutting down the government, and everybody agreed to cuts, and then only the military got their money back, and it's still Skid Row, the same Skid Row, and in probably some cases the same people.
Well, Reagan...
And that's a policy that started with Reagan when he was just governor.
Yeah, I mean, and for those of you who are not Angelinos or Californians, and heaven knows some people came here from other places, Ronald Reagan did release people from mental institutions to the streets, if you call that being released.
Right.
And... there was no place for them to go and no services for them, and generationally they're still there and multiplying. And as much as it's his fault, it's our fault. And not that anybody would blame anybody for anything around here, but it is a pattern, of the culture of a capitalist economy that you have richer and smaller amount, or even a larger amount of very, very rich people, and a much, much larger, incredible amount of very poor people. And in terms of the government and what its job is, what is the government's job? How about the health, education, and welfare and safety of the American people? Yeah. Where does that come in to Donald Trump's ideology? Ideology, I don't know about. Ideology has something to do with ideas. Yeah. Maybe I misspoke.
But that's the thing. And so when I, over the years looking at that, I think about, things you've told me about your conversations with Leon Golub, who was another artist who, was and his amazing wife, who were artists who in their own way. Nancy Sparrow, who did the same kind of thing. In other words, made really arguably very beautiful, well-crafted, thoughtful work about very terrible situations and contexts. And so that sort of didn't come out of nowhere. I mean, that was a very personal experience for you, and that was happening during the Reagan administration and all of the injustices nationally and in New York and here that he left behind. And sort of here we still are. And I was just wondering if you think of it as the same thing that you were doing then that you're doing now, or what it is for you to have been doing it this whole time. Do you feel that there have been successes?
There's this whole time, and then there's another whole time, because I'm very old. And I was kind of a late bloomer when it comes to what you're talking about. But just to tell you a little story, when I was a little kid growing up on the upper left side of Manhattan, in the 1950s. My parents were both union organizers, and I was an only child, and they were very busy saving the world from capitalist greed. How's that going, by the way?
Yeah.
I don't know, still a good job, and somebody's got to do it. Where are you, Leo? Is he still here? He's off doing it. Anyway, they found out that I was an arty kid, pretty soon, since that's all I did, except for playing stickball. And so they said, okay, and that, the progressive community in New York in the 1930s, you're talking about the Depression and after, the activists and the politicos and all the artists in all the different arts were a really tight-knit community. They needed to be, and they were hip to each other. They really dug each other. My parents loved art. So when they said, oh, the kid's an artist. Okay, here you go. Goya, Daumier, the great Mexican muralist, Jose Guadalupe Posada. Here you go, kid. And I'm like, oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah. And then they said, okay, and you know how most kids, I don't know about you guys, when you get out of elementary school, you go to the park to play, or you go to your violin lessons, or whatever you do, your ballet lessons, this or that. My parents decided that the major museums in Manhattan were daycare centers for me. And they would send me, there'd be like a little, I've told this a lot, but...
That's my favorite story.
Yeah, so probably everybody... Stop me if you know this atomic secret, so I'd get up in the morning like a school day, and there'd be a brown paper bag in the bottom of the refrigerator with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, an apple, and one Oreo cookie, one. Only child. I don't know. Maybe they didn't like me as much as I thought. 2 Subway tokens, $1 and a note. Here you go. Rabala. Go to any museum you want after school. Come back for dinner at 6:30. Love and solidarity, Mom and Dad.
I know. Love and solidarity. I've appropriated that for every time I write.
That is our greeting.
It makes me so happy that I can't stop saying it. But I think, that's the kind of story, like as an art critic or, any kind of art writer, I hear a story like that as an origin story for an artist like you, and I just think, well, that's it. Like, but there's more. But there's more. Exactly. And the more is, so I would spend like 2 or 3 afternoons a week with my best friend Guernica, which was Picasso's great painting. In residence at the Modern at that time. Now it's back home in Spain where it belongs. And also Miro, Posada, all these paintings. And then I would go to the Met. Everything's at the Met. Everybody's at the Met. My first girlfriend was a 70-ton Sphinx. I just loved her. She was mostly a cat. And then this beautiful woman, just sitting there going, hi. I went, oh, this is so cool. And but I learned all this stuff, and then I go to the Guggenheim and get dizzy, if any of you have ever been there, and going up and coming down. And then the Whitney, which was specifically, its mandate was for American art. So you see a lot of American art that you otherwise would never see because like nobody else is going to show that stuff. But not that it's bad, it's just American. Anyway, I learned so much that I didn't know I was learning. And I knew about political posters and all this stuff. I never thought that I would ever have an occasion to make one, and I had no fucking idea how to make one, but it did come up, to your point. So there is all that backstory. Well, and I think because then that was the whole sort of story with Leon and everything, but I mean also Art Center is a place where design skills were not denigrated as like not art. Like that's a place where there's way more integration of, you know, the sort of fine and applied, you know, graphic, you know, kind of things. Whereas, you know, so I think, you know, I have a theory that also, you know, too, that there's some residual, you know, absorption of sort of like communication strategies. And, you know, I don't want to use like propaganda like it's a bad thing, but just that idea of like what image-based messaging looks like when it's effective.
Well, you're right. I mean, I absorbed a lot of propaganda from my parents, my loving parents, and they loved me and communism. That's a nice combination. And you see some red around the... And anyway, that's a different red. I mean, I didn't go to Art Center, but the person I love most in the world is a great graphic designer. She's right over there, wearing her notorious RBG. She's been wearing it for weeks. Ever since the Kavanaugh hearings, it was on, and that's it. So now I get 2 for 1 there, 2 great ones for 1. I know nothing about graphic design. When I did Men with No Lips, which was my first poster, I just took these 4 nasty little black and white paintings of Ronald Reagan and his members of his cabinet and broke the piggy bank and tried to figure out some way to put men with no lips under each one. It's a terrible, you know, pathetic little poster, but all I was trying to do was make it so people could read it on the streets when we put it up in the middle of the night. And if you're driving around LA, you stop and see it, and then you see another one, and hopefully you're surrounded and you go, what the hell is that? Which is success for a little old artist.
Tell the story about that poster when you were postering out in the streets of LA and the guys asking you what kind of band is playing.
Oh yeah, and I mean, and that's actually, thank you, Elizabeth, because I want to talk a little, that was kind of like where I was psychically gonna maybe head is some, I know that since that, whatever year that was, 1986, that
when you were children.
In between then and a couple of months ago, a lot of stories of postering have probably happened.
Yes, a lot of stuff. Everything's a story, you know, like, we're humans, that's what we do. We take every bad thing that's ever happened to us, turn it into a good story, hopefully. Not necessarily a happy one, but if you're any good, a good one. But this is Boom Boom, and Boom Boom knows me like those years better than almost anybody except Debbie. And what she's talking about is when we first put up Men with No Lips, and it was just me and my friend in a kind of Tom Sawyer, Huck Finn moment, like, you're going to be good at this. You're going to love going out in the middle of the night in one of the most dangerous urban areas.
Here's a bucket of glue.
Yeah, you're spattering yourself. It's going to be great. Right. You're going to be great at it. Oh, it's a little illegal, kind of a little bit like being a little pregnant. But just a little. But yeah, just a little. So we're putting them up, and some kids come by, and this is like 2:30 in the morning. Kids come roaring by on Sunset. You know, they're in a Mustang ragtop. And they yell out, "Where's that band playing? Where are they?" And I'm going, 4 years in the White House.
Right, nightly. Oh my God. I mean, and that's another thing, like I mentioned like way earlier, but you know that a lot of the things that were like definitely illegal. I mean, I remember going to the meetups and getting ready, and you would give a speech with like your phone number, your lawyer's phone number, your city councilman's phone number, the ACLU switchboard operator. Yeah, and you'd be like, and you would have a little script like, here's what to say, here's what not to say, like,
guerrilla
I know my
etiquette.
rights, pig, not to say.
Right.
Things like, it's art, I don't mean anything by it, or if it's a clean, well-lit space, it's a clean, well-lit space that you can see from the street. Like, then you had to give all this advice, and it was like survival tactics. And I feel like now what I want to know is, has that changed? I feel like it's changed. It's much less hostile out there for street artists, but at the same time, how has it, is that an accurate description? Like, what have you sort of noticed in terms of the public acceptance and reaction since you started?
Yeah, well, at that time, in the late 80s and early 90s, I had a special relationship with Daryl Gates. It did not go well. And and also, LA, being one of the biggest cities in America, has the least police per capita of any city in the United States. So they're a little stressed. And if their donuts are not just right, it's worse. So I had many conversations with men.
You were known to them.
Yeah, with men and women in, midnight blue suits with shiny accessories. And I developed a little bit of guerrilla etiquette.
Yeah.
And how just like you said. And I was conscious of it. I mean, actually, if all goes well and you practice Robbie's rules of guerrilla etiquette, the worst thing that could happen is you get a citation. It's a municipal code violation, and you get a citation to appear before a judge in 30 days and have a nice conversation with him or her, and they decide your fate. But if anything else untoward happens, gone. Now, when I get stopped, it's like this little old white guy, who was a professor at USC, he was out there, and they would look at me and go home and pay your taxes. But that wasn't true of a lot of our volunteers who were like high school and college kids running around like crazy, and you try to tell an 18-year-old what not to do. That works really well. In fact, I would give this spiel, and they'd be writing it down, and then they want to do, like, at the end of the night, they want to do war stories, like, aren't we going to meet up again, at Toy?
Yeah.
Which is
Toy. Oh my God, that's right.
Yeah.
Flashback.
Yeah. The slowest service, the worst food, and the great.
They were open so late.
Oh, open so late, and the greatest old science fiction movies,
Yeah.
So I say, oh yeah, that's right. I want to meet afterwards, and sure I do. I want them to be okay. That's what I don't want to hear them on my cell phone saying, Mr. Conal, could you do our bail?
Yeah.
That's what I don't want. So yeah, sure, I'll meet up with you.
Did that ever happen?
It happened all the time. And which?
Calling you from jail. I
not so much.
This cop, you were my dad. Please come get me. Whatever.
Yeah. Well, I had a few of those. There are many, many stories, like in the Naked City. But what I wanted to tell you was, so these kids would come to Toy, and I say, oh, great, whew, there they are. How'd it go? Great, man. And they take out their list. And, we did everything you told us not to do. It was fantastic. My people. So I kind of gave up on the demographics of where to go poster. They all go to their neighborhood and do it, that's your prerogative. Thank you for helping.
As well as photographing each other doing it.
What else?
Posting that on the internet. Here's me committing a property
That's
crime.
right, yeah. That's right, now.
Right, now, and that's kind of what I mean.
They're all fucking proud of
yeah.
it,
And I don't feel like people have gone to jail in a while or been harassed by cops in a while. I think a whole shift has obviously happened in the acceptance of street art in general, but I also think specifically in the recognition of your work. I think it took hold, it got insanely popular and beloved, and so I think there was a time before it was safe for everyone that it was still safe for your people. Before it was safe
a little bit of protection because we have our people,
right?
All 60 of you. Which I'm very grateful for. And that is the most surprising thing to me of this whole project, which is going on since 1986, is I knew that, some people would help, but I never expected so many people and so many different kinds of people. It's really amazing. And most of you are here except the next generation who are out doing probably what I should be doing.
Voting, paying taxes.
Putting shit up on the street.
Yeah, well, hey, we should all go out. Did you bring posters? Did you bring it up for everybody?
No.
Yeah, right?
No.
But
one thing I wanted to say.
Tell.
So, from your lips to the 5 police forces in Washington, D.C., because I'm going there for Halloween, with a new poster, Rudy Giuliani. And we have our crews. We have our crews in D.C. already. The thing is about D.C. is it's a little hot right now, a little hot, and there are 5 different kinds of police forces in D.C. I'll tell you one story quickly. We're doing Jim and Tammy Baker.
That was
False Prophet.
False Prophet.
A
with
diptych.
FIT.
Yeah, FIT. In full color, and driving around in a rent-a-car, and got stopped by D.C. District of Columbia cops. And they come up to the car, and they look and say, "Are you the guy putting up those posters around?" And you know, the car's full of glue. There's posters everywhere. Yes, yes. And they say, "Can we have 2 for the station house?" With no glue. And I go, "Where's a bar?" You know, about 47 and a half minutes later, we're on the mall and we get stopped by federal police.
That's totally different.
A little different. Okay, you came all the way from California to do this to your capital. Come with us. Did not go so well.
So less of a fan base.
Less of a fan base.
At the federal level.
You gotta know your fans by the badges they wear. You know? Like so. I'm going. We're gonna put up posters. We have a show of prints of all of these that's opening on Halloween at Busboys and Poets in the Brookland. There are 7 Busboys and Poets, but in Brookland, and we're gonna have a little party. So you're all invited. All your friends in government, all invited. You know, I hope there are no packages waiting for us.
Oh my God! Right? Don't even.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole.
Yeah, I don't think we're at that level yet.
I don't think we're quite there yet.
No.
Although, okay, so it's funny that because we're looking at this Giuliani, there's another one, but I remember when he was mayor.
Yeah.
And you did a Giuliani one called Equality of Life, and it was falling apart because it was the cruelty of the broken windows policing that was going on at the mayoral level in New York City.
You want to hear a story about that?
And it's still the same fucking guy. So yeah, tell
still
your
the same
Giuliani
guy,
story.
Same guy, yeah. A few less brain cells, perhaps. But still, probably more dangerous because of it. But okay, so you will remember Richard Riordan, who was the LA mayor. And one thing about thinking globally and acting locally is the more local you get with my kind of stuff, the more flack you take, like from Daryl Gates. So that Richard Riordan was trying to do a subway in LA, and he made like $1 billion sinkhole in Hollywood.
I remember that.
So I did a poster of him that was actually a die-cut circle with the text "Tunnel Vision," and the tunnel is crumbling. And we put it up all over town. And my friends in New York, you know, I'm from New York, and all my RCP and SWP people who follow me, never mind who they are, even though they're here. You know, were enraged, you know, and my New York buddies too were. How could you're a New Yorker, how could you do the mayor of LA and not do Rudy, you know? Okay. So I did Rudy, and I took it to them, and they wouldn't put it up. And I said, "What? You're communists, you know, like, or you're young artists. You got nothing to do and no job or nothing, you know, like." You're not really beneficiaries of the system, of Rudy's system, you know, like, he'd arrest you for, you know, washing windows, which is probably the only thing you could do to make any money. You know, and they were scared of Rudy because he had his own special anti-graffiti task force.
That's right.
Jumping out of fake taxi cabs, you know, plain clothes, and busting people everywhere. So I'm there with like 3,000 posters, buckets and buckets of glue and brushes. I brought, got everything from the old Pearl, which is no longer with us.
On
but
Canal.
Yeah, on Canal, right? And these guys wouldn't do it. They said, "Ooh." So what the hell is going on? In LA, we got hundreds of people, like LA, West Side, baby. Come on. So I intimidated some of them into doing it, and it went fine.
Right, exactly. And that was a great poster. And it's just funny because it's sort of like he's got like a lot of these people have a little bit of a Dorian Gray thing happening where you've painted them over the years.
We have a little
and they
history.
are aging in the work. Like he was like a dapper young thing in that inequality of life compared to this nonsense. This like melted
We were all
face
dapper
nonsense.
young things.